let's get into a little NCAA.
Absolutely, get to the good stuff, which there was some good and then there was some bad. So it depends on how you look at this.
Let's skip the first one for a little bit, why we're skipping.
I would agree to that. We'll explain that in a second, all you sports fans out there. We'll
move on to number 10, Virginia Tech, at number 20, Georgia Tech. Virginia Tech taking this one 37-26. It's just, I don't know.
I think, for that game, great outcome. Not surprising with Virginia Tech being out, the higher ranked team. But in the end, I would say probably, possibly two underrated teams. They're ranked, but you don't hear a lot about them in general. Is when you factor in LSU and Alabama and
Oklahoma State.
Absolutely. You hear a lot about those top 5 teams, but if you're in the 10 or below, great, you're ranked, but you're not hearing about unless you're into those markets. So definitely a great window for VT. And speaking of, then you talk about notable teams, you look at number 6 Oregon playing number 3 Stanford, and you got to wonder what's going on with Stanford. Yeah, they've had a great season up to now. Yes, they're ranked, but they got shellacked by Oregon, 53-30.
Shellacked, good call.
I'm sorry, when your defense lets over, let's say, 35 points, we're talking 53 points to 30. It was an offensive struggle both ways of the ball. Defenses obviously had a hard time. Let's compare this. 53-30, that's pretty much the score out of the UNI men's basketball game last night. And you're talking about an 11-man football team playing that score. So, obviously, it was a powerhouse offensive struggle. Defenses had a hard time stopping both directions. But, nonetheless, a great game for Oregon, and clearly you would think they're going to move up here.
Yeah, Oregon, I think they might have moved up to 5 or 4. I know for sure Stanford moved down to number 8. So, rough week for Stanford.
Absolutely. And then a tough week for more than a bajillion reasons here for Penn State. But number 19, Nebraska, on the road with a tough emotional battle against the number 12, Penn State. And without getting into all the messy details, because we've all heard the stories in the national media 100,000 times, so we're not going to dig into that. But, Penn State minus Joe Paul and half the coaching staff still put on an amazing matchup in this game.
It was really close. And watching the game, it was very one-sided for a lot of the game. But then Penn State did get on the board, only losing by a field goal.
Yeah, give them credit. That's a heck of a win, considering all the distractions and the lack of prep time. They came into the game on Thursday, Friday, basically, and the interim coach is now saying, we don't really know what's going on. We don't have a game plan yet, but all we know is we're playing a game at home on Saturday. Granted,
honestly was
keep it within a field goal and not have a game plan. Kudos to the interim coach. That's a heck of a showing, I think.
I was truly surprised. I almost thought that they were going to, especially with the bomb threats that they had on Friday night, I was surprised that they didn't cancel that game.
Absolutely, and I'm surprised. A lot of people thought that they were going to get blown out, which, to some degree, I was kind of on that bandwagon. I literally thought that there was going to be too much on the distraction plate for Penn State to overcome that. But they held tough. I give them credit. But again, number 19 Nebraska now moving up after defeating number 12 Penn State 17-14 by a field goal. And enough with that. Moving on to another game, 24 Auburn to number 14 Georgia.
In this game, Georgia held them to just a touchdown. Georgia winning 25-7. They did have home field advantage. They were 10 ranks higher, but I feel like Auburn should have put up more of a battle, especially with how hot that team was last year. A team that theoretically good should have had way more solid of a game than that.
Yeah, I think so. When you factor that whole situation in, I guess it's not surprising. I think it's a little extreme to say 25, but number 14 versus number 24. Yeah, you're going to expect Georgia to have the win with the outcome on that one.
Yeah, but I guess I expected it to be a little closer. Personally.
Okay. I'll allow that. Now, the final game here that we omitted from starting with. Of course, all you Hawkeye fans out there, this is kind of a tough pill to swallow, but, in some regards, not totally surprising. How many of us honestly came in after losing to Minnesota Gophers? How many of us really expected to get that win over Michigan and then truly expected to be able to repeat it twice in a row and get the win over Michigan State?
Me.
You did? Okay. I'm going to say you were overly optimistic.
I was overly optimistic, and I usually am when it comes to the Hawkeyes.
And that's right.
However, we did beat Michigan. Did you see that game?
Yes, I did see that game.
And in this game, Marvin McNutt got one of the top 10 plays on SportsCenter.
Yeah, that's great.
Did you see that catch?
I did see the catch.
It was a beautiful catch.
You should know I was watching the game because you and I watched the game together.
This is true. Yeah, and there's no better place to watch a football game than a car dealership.
Okay, so we were watching while I was at work, but that's irrelevant. But nonetheless, number 13 Michigan State coming into Kinnick Stadium this past weekend and handing it to the Iowa Hawkeyes 37-21. And as much as I like the game, I would say the one thing that I disagree with the most, there's two things. I'll throw this out. First, we go back to a little bit too much of the conservative play call, both sides of the ball. We didn't do enough to run the ball, I think, effectively. That was in a play scheme that really opened up the playbook enough to get Michigan State's defense to back up off the line. I mean, there were times they were stacking the line pretty hot. But, Marvin McNutt did a great job. Some catches should have been caught. You think of, what's the other receiver? Not McNutt, but Davis, I think is his last name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Couple catches in that game. There were several catches in the game that coulda, shoulda, wouldas, and probably could have broken. But having said that, the second most crucial thing in that game that I dislike the most, and I think most Hawkeye fans will agree with me out there. If you don't, message us on Facebook and we can discuss this more on the air after the next song break. But the refereeing in that game, personally, I think was abysmal.
It was really bad.
There was a lot of calls that should have not been called. There were several calls that should have been called that weren't, and I think a lot of time they were actually, they were favoring Michigan State in that factor. There were a lot of calls that went against the Hawkeyes that I think, were very minute or questionable.
Yeah, I don't know.
And what happened to being able to hit a guy in the game?
We can't do that anymore.
No, apparently not. I mean, why don't we just strap the flags on and play a collegiate flag football game? But having said that, that's a whole new game, and we'll move on to next week. So how about we get back to some music so I can vent off, and we'll...
Oh, yeah, that sounds good. And
we'll get the NCAA...
A friend of mine, Sarah Endino, walked by the window again. She wants us to say hi.
Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. And another shout-out. We actually have a request to talk about curling later in the show.
You're kidding, right?
I wish
Am I missing out on this?
A friend of mine...
this must be on your...
On my status, they posted they'll only listen if we talk about curling.
I might have to do some research on that one.
We'll try our best to get.
Is there like a professional curling league?
I don't know. We'll have to look into that. And,
send us a link where we can find the details.
We definitely have a lot more to talk about. We've got some more, our NCAA preview. We got NFL, touch on the NBA, and much more. A good flea flicker from this weekend. That'll be fun to talk about here in a little bit.
That's right. Plus, we'll have weather coming up here in a second as well.
That's right. So, give us...
Give us your thoughts on Facebook or send us an email. You can find our emails at the UNI website, or just hit us up on the Let's Talk Sports page on Facebook there. So if you don't know us on Facebook personally, hit us up on the actual group page.
Yep. So next we have a day to remember, the downfall of us all, here on 94.5 KULT.